Good morning, everyone! I apparently cannot make an intro to save my life! First off, I was going to talk about the Super Bowl's halftime show, and how I disliked it due to a multitude of technical issues. Then, the WTFU movement happened and I put my focus into that, causing me to push this review back even further. I then was going to talk about most of what happened in recent weeks. I had to make a quick video about that due to unforeseen circumstances. So, hopefully without being too rude, I'm just going to cut to the chase. Static Shock. This video tackled a lot of really tough issues. Another series in the DC animated universe, Static Shock was an amazing cartoon that focused around Virgil Hawkins, who I always thought was a pretty cool guy. One night, out on the docks, he had fallen in with this gang fight, one of the many things this show discusses, by the way, except that this took place next to a tanker of chemicals. When police arrived and used tear gas to stop the fighting, the vat exploded, giving everyone there superpowers, including Virgil. Now, where almost everyone there turned to villainy, Virgil used his powers for good. He was even given a gun to take down someone who was bullying him right beforehand, but instead tossed it into the river. His show would cross over with many others, such as Batman, and if you're wondering why Robin didn't tag along in any of the adventures...
So, where's Robin?
With the Titans.
The who?
You'll meet him someday.
Yeah, except they've been sniffing glue these last few years. Granted, I'm told they're getting their act together. Either way, today's episode is a personal favorite. And yes, I know Rebel Taxi talked about it in his Christmas special video, but I don't care. I've been planning on reviewing this episode for months. This episode is the extremely powerful Frozen Out. First off, the intro sequence is pretty good. It's not the best I've seen, but for what it does, introducing the hero and some of the villains, it works pretty well. The actual episode starts during Christmas time. Virgil is late when he visits a friend for a Hanukkah party when the power for the entire block goes out. He finds that the power substation is covered in a blanket of ice. And before you ask, Mr. Freeze is nowhere to be found. But his daughter is. Sorta. He comes across a homeless girl and blows her off.
Snowball fight, anyone? Ask me when I'm awake. In June.
Story of my life as it seems. Reggie, Virgil's best friend and sidekick, has set up an event for Static to light up a Christmas tree later on in the week. Afterwards, he goes to a mall where he sees the same homeless girl as before. He sprints off and changes. Thanks to a misunderstanding, the homeless girl tries to flee the place, covering the entire mall in ice. That sounds extremely familiar. After seeing a mother protect her son, she gets a flashback where her own mother is taken away. Barely a word is spoken, and yet so much is said with this one scene. That was what separated this superhero show from all the rest. Even though Static was a fast talker, there were a lot of scenes like this that didn't need anything spoken to be said. After the girl runs off, Virgil and Richie helps out with a food drive. That is until Richie bails on Virgil. Friends till the end, am I right? The episode isn't really about him anyway. Now, allow me to point out my only real gripe with this episode. The animation. It's not good. And now, it does improve in later episodes. This is only the first season, but you can tell that the show didn't have the best budget. However, it does what it needs to do with what it has. After a bit of factoids about how homelessness is caused, Virgil bolts to prepare for another party. His schedule is kinda booked, you see, so it kind of annoys him when something happens, like Richie calling him to say that the villain from earlier is freezing up a turnpike. Oh, and Richie calls him to say that the villain from earlier is freezing up a turnpike. Static goes to confront the girl, who she says is named Permafrost. So, Elsa meets Killer Frost. Cool, got it. When he says that she has to go with him, it triggers a memory of when the Child Protective Services went to pick her up. So she flees again, causing a wave of snow to stop Static. This doesn't work, as he follows her to a homeless camp. They direct him to a literal frozen bedroom where, again, so much is said without words. Static goes to the Reverend he met earlier, asking for some help. The Rev tells him to treat her like a normal person, that being homeless doesn't make her any less a person than anyone else. It all culminates when Permafrost tries to ice him at a tree lighting ceremony, but Virgil talks her down by talking about his own mom. She explains how she feels cold and alone when people pass her by, casting a sympathetic light on her. We next see her when she meets the Reverend, who puts her in a special homeless program that'll also help her mental condition. We end the episode with a sermon, repeating the show's message.
Whether you are a disciple of Muhammad, a child of Abraham, or a member of the body of Christ, you know that you are called upon to care for the needy and the poor.
And that was Static Shock's Frozen Out, and you can clearly see where its heart lies. Static Shock is not afraid of tackling tough subjects, like I said, and this episode is no different. While the animation is notably lacking in quality, this was only the first season, so you can argue it was testing the waters. Other than that, the episode delivers its message pretty well. In the end, my final score is an 8 out of 10. Now, next time on Archerversus, I'm going to do something I haven't done in years. But you know what? I feel like I'm going to have a bad time.